Now, tonight, we're going to be speaking with George Lutz. And a little bit about George Lutz. He has lived in the Amityville Horror House, and he is the basis for the books and everything that you've seen about the Amityville Horror. Him and his family lived in there for 28 days and then left. We're going to be speaking with George Lutz, and briefly. And also, it is a pleasure to have Lorraine Warren on the show. She's going to be also talking about what her and Ed found out about the Amityville Horror, how they investigated it, and everything else like that. So, without any further ado, let's bring both of them on the show. George and Lorraine, welcome.
Thank you.
George.
Hi.
How you doing?
Hi,
How are
Lee.
you?
Can you guys hear each other or what? George, can you hear Lorraine?
Has she said anything?
Yes, I said hi, Lee.
Hi, Lorraine. How are you?
Good, dear.
Yes,
Very
I can
good.
hear her just fine.
Oh, okay. All right, now let's see. Oh boy, where do I even start with this?
Tell us how Ed is.
Ed is sleeping while he's partially watching TV right in the room next to me. So I can look right in there and see him.
Is he better?
Well, he's home. That's the biggest thing of all. I mean, considering the fact that we are very, very, very fortunate through prayer and faith to have Ed alive. And he is home. I have live-in help that's helping me care for him.
Good.
But the most important thing is having him home.
Lorraine?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Kevin. We met briefly once. I just wanted to say I'm very glad to hear about Ed, and my prayers go out to him.
Thank you. I hope everyone's prayers go out for him, please. That is so needed. That's what's got him to this point where he is at. And he was watching Tom Brokaw on The Price We Paid for Peace because he's a veteran of World War II.
Now, before we go into this, Lorraine, you have your views and what had happened at 112 Ocean Avenue.
Okay, I can give you some of the background concerning before we met. To me, he is Lee Lutz.
That's to me also.
And that before we met Lee and Kathy and the children, and Harry, the dog, before we met them, let's go back to the night of the tragedy that had occurred 13 months before George and Kathy ever bought this home. At the exact moment, the exact time that Ronald DeFeo murdered every one of his family in that home at 112 Ocean Avenue in Amityville, Ed's mother passed away. Her death certificate reads the exact time.
Wow.
Ed's mother had been diagnosed with terminal cancer 22 years before, with 6 months to live. We had gone to a shrine in Montreal, Canada, to pray for a speedy recovery or happy death for his mother, but it was very hopeless. His mom lived 22 years and died at that exact same moment. Now, at that time, Ed and I were speaking at a university in West Virginia, and we had to drive home for her funeral. We had our car, so we had no choice. We couldn't fly home, and the body was held. We knew nothing about the tragedy that had occurred there in Amityville. We knew nothing whatever about it. We weren't programmed by it. We knew nothing about the news.
Mm-hmm.
When George and Kathy and the family moved into that home and fled after 28 days, they didn't move out, they fled. And when they did, we were again on tour, and we were out in the Midwest. So we knew nothing about the news. But when the call came in to us that February day, when that call came in from the media, from Marvin Scott to our home, what was any different about that Amityville case than hundreds and hundreds of cases that Ed and I had already been involved with? After all, Ed and I have been involved over 50 years throughout the world with cases. But what was it about that phone call that day that just made me have the eeriest feeling? It was such a strong feeling that I had that I contacted many priests who had worked with Ed and I in the past and asked if they would enter that home with us in spirit and pray for us and the family. Why? I mean, did I psychically know it? I couldn't have been pre-programmed, that's for sure.
So, Lorraine, you actually felt as though something was wrong when you got that phone call?
Oh, yeah. So much so. So, I remember that it angered Ed because I got in the car and I had to get out. I had to leave the house in order to find some peace. But that day had been a beautiful day for Ed and I up to that point in time of that afternoon. We had gone out for a ride and went for a really long walk. It was a beautiful day. There was nothing about the day prior to that phone call that could have programmed me to have that tremendous apprehension. But at the post office, when I went over to pick up our mail at the P.O. box, there was an envelope from a man on Long Island by the name of Loftus. To this day, I have never met the man. He had watched us on TV shows and sent us a package. In that was a great deal of literature and a second-class relic of Padre Pio. That man's relic I carried into their home that night.
Now, Lorraine, isn't it? It's true that you even have a picture of Padre Pio manifesting in the house.
In the wet bar room, which is on the first floor.
Mm-hmm.
I've got that cupped in my hand, and it was a horrible feeling in that room. That was awful. I could see bodies all lined up. I could see sheets over them. It was the DeFeos, I guess, that I was looking at. And I just hugged that, tightened that relic in my hand and hugged it to me. And, prayed for God's strength. I prayed to Padre Pio for the gift of discernment, to help me with my discernment, and to also protect us, the researchers. Now, in the meantime, after I had gone out to the post office to get this, not knowing it was there, of course, but Ed had contacted many people who entered that house with us. Although there are people today that are surfacing that said they went in to George and Kathy's home, they never were in that home.
Mm-hmm. Now,
we were the chief investigators going in there, which Lee will tell you, and we brought the people that were there. The president of the American Society for Psychic Research, a parapsychologist, and his wife, who were friends of ours, people from Duke. We brought these people in to that house.
Mm-hmm.
All of these people claiming that this was a hoax, that they were in that house. They were never in that house. What are they basing hoax on? Ed put up, prior to Ed becoming so critically ill 14 months ago, Ed put up a $10,000 reward for anyone that would prove to him beyond a shadow of a doubt that there was any hoax connected to that house. Not one person ever claimed it. And now, today, who are these people that are coming forward? Who are they? What have they got to gain? And truthfully, how many people know how very, very little George and Kathy, the children, got out of that case? How many people really know how very, very little they ever received? We have been behind them 100% since we were in that house. That home has affected our personal lives more than any case we ever worked on, and we will always be 100% behind them.
Now, Lorraine, what exactly do you think made the Amityville Horror case what it is? I mean, why was it so widely publicized? Was it because people tried to get in there and they got agitated that they couldn't get in to experience what was in the house?
It's probably, Ed and I have been all over the world, involved. And like Ed will say so many times, that you can go in the smallest village in the most remote area of the world and say about Amityville, and they know what you're talking about. It's the most famous haunted home in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Now, George and Kathy didn't set out to move into the most famous haunted house in the world under no circumstances whatsoever. They went into a house and tried to make that their dream home. George was going to have his business out of there. I still have, and moved from Ed's room, right next to me here, out onto the porch, the same plant, the little plant that he gave me that belonged to his grandfather. I still have that. And I think about the shows. I think about all the nonsense that came up because of the priest involved and how they would say there was no priest.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were asked to protect the identity of that priest, and so were the Lutzes asked to. And we did because of the fact that we knew how important it was to do it. But then finally it got out who Father Pecoraro was, that he was the priest involved. And finally it was released. And still they would find something else. But that case was a true case of demonic infestation that could have destroyed that family.
Now, Lorraine, the house at 112 Ocean Avenue, do you think that by any chance all the controversy that was wrapped up around it, do you think that it could have been like, if there wasn't so much publicity towards it, would it have been just another case that you would have done?
Yes, it would have. It just would have been another case. But maybe it was the timing. Maybe that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it was what the public was looking for. Tam Mossman was the editor. He then, years later, wanted our biography. And it was Tam Mossman who was our editor of The Demonologist.
Mm-hmm.
And did it start from there? Yes, it could have. And Jay Anson wrote that book just on tapes, that George and Kathy,
right,
sent to him. That's all.
Could I add something here?
Pardon?
Could I add something here?
Sure, please.
What most people don't know, Lorraine, is that you and Ed came down at the request of Laura DiDeo and met with Kathy and I and decided that you really needed to have more people there than just yourself. So you went back twice.
That's right.
And what you organized for the second time was as probably as good a investigation as could be put together at the time, given all the considerations involved with the media that demanded to be a part of it, and Laura DeDeo worked for them, so there wasn't much choice there.
No.
All the people you brought in, including Mary Pascarella and their qualifications, were exemplary. They all had years and years of investigating these kinds of houses or phenomena.
That's right.
And the reason you did that was because of what you sensed when you went the first time. Was my understanding was that you realized it was bigger than something you should try to deal with yourselves.
Oh, it was very big. It was extremely big. Do you remember, Lee? Do you remember how Ed, who is never affected, how it was the men that were affected the most in this case?
He was. I've always thought of Ed as fearless, and yet he complained of an attack of tachycardia, the racing of his heart, and I think it jarred him.
Yes.
In a way that he really couldn't explain to us, because we were already didn't know what to think about anything, and he hears someone that comes highly recommended, has been all over. If I recall correctly about Ed, he was court-martialed for missing a troop ship movement, and then was exonerated when the ship went down, and he had seen that the ship was going to go down. Nobody believed him. Ed is a real hero and always has been in my mind. And he's a tough guy. As for all of his education and experience, he is a very, very tough, experienced man. And
yes, he is.
This was his first experience in there was not something that was comfortable. It wasn't something that was usual for you to have had to go through on your own, so he wanted more people there.
Yes, now with that...
I don't know if that's the right way to put that for
yes,
you. I don't
it is.
Put words in your mouth.
You put it very well. And then I did not know, as I went to go up the stairway onto the second floor, I didn't know that Ed wasn't behind me. You know, the media were there, and I didn't know that he wasn't behind me at all.
This is the first time you went in before you went back with the Rileys and Mary Pascarella?
Marvin Scott and Laura DeDeo and Gene Campbell was taking the photographs throughout the house.
That was March 6th, if I recall.
Yes, that was March 6th.
But
that was the second time.
You were there before that without
Yes, that was
Gene
the
Campbell.
second time, you're right. And when I started to walk up the stairs, it was as if you were like walking against a waterfall, a force that was so strong. But never did I know that Ed wasn't behind me. But as a religious demonologist, Ed waited for the time when he could be really by himself to provoke in the name of Jesus Christ for what was there to reveal its identity. And he went down into the basement and took the relics, that cross with the relic of the true cross in it, and commanded in the name of Jesus Christ for what was there. Now, unbeknown to me, that is happening at the exact time that I'm under attack walking up the stairs. And he felt, as he described it, like somebody took a very hot, wet blanket and threw it right over the top of him, so that his heart pounded, what you're talking about, excuse me, and it was almost impossible for him to catch his breath. And he had to then command it in Christ's name to leave and to go back to where it came from. But then he didn't talk about that. He didn't talk about that for a long time. So it affected him. Yes, it did affect him very, very badly. And it was that night going home when, you remember I had fasted, and I was very, very hungry. I just wanted something, anything. You'd never ever have to ask Ed to stop for something to eat. Ever.
As we all know from experience, right?
I mean, honest to God, you'd say something about that diner you passed. He said, why, do we pass a diner? Because believe me, you'd never, ever have to ask. And Ed is always took tremendous pride in his driving, like he had no motor vehicle, thank God, encounters whatsoever in any category. And he drove erratically going home. Something was very wrong. Something was so wrong. I knew that. I knew something was so wrong. Now, this is the first time, Lee.
Now, do you remember what while you're on, and I can ask you, rather than me say it, I think I'd rather have you answer it.
What?
Do you remember how little or what information you were given before you went in there, and how the circumstances came about that you got the keys to go in there with Laura DeDeo? What did you and I talk to each other, for example, before that, or did Kathy and I sit down and tell you anything about what had gone on, or anything like that?
No.
Or my memory of it is that we kind of wanted you to go in cold without knowing anything and see if you found anything.
We really did not know until we met with you and Kathy's mom, and the children and the dog at Kathy's mother's house for supper with Father Pecoraro.
That was after the second time you were in the house.
That was after the second time, and that's when we got really the whole story.
Kind of filled in on what had gone on.
Filled in on what was
That's the way I recall it, and so often my memory isn't the same as someone else's. That's why I was asking you.
Mm-hmm. That's because when I remember how this annoyed Ed. I remember how this annoyed Ed. We met you at the pizza parlor, and Ed takes out the recorder and asks you what happened. And you kept saying to him, you know. Oh. Lee, if you ever knew how upset he was, because you kept saying, you know.
All right, guys, I got to take a short break, and when we come back to the Lou Gentile Show, we'll be speaking more with George Lutz and Lorraine Warren right after this. Gentile Show, and tonight we're speaking with George Lutz and Lorraine Warren about the Amityville Horror. What really happened there, straight from the horse's mouth. Exactly what happened. We're finding out what's happened at Amityville, or what happened at Amityville, as well as Lorraine and her findings. We're going to get more into that in a minute. And for more information, you can visit our website at www.lougentile.com. And we are also taking your emails, IMs, and everything else like that when we answer questions at the top of the next hour. And the fax number, in case you want to fax in your questions if you're having a hard time calling in or whatever, is 215-331-4357. That's 215-331-4357. And I don't know, Kev, what do you think?
Wow. I mean, this has been a very interesting and eye-opening half an hour.
You're not kidding. All right, let's get back on the line with George and Lorraine. Welcome back, guys.
Thank you.
All right, now, Lorraine, can you explain to the listening audience exactly what happened the first day that you actually investigated the Amityville house at 112 Ocean Avenue when you pulled up into the driveway?
Well, when I first entered the home, the first emotion, and it was emotion, it wasn't any psychic discernment, was one of terrible sadness and depression. But don't forget, I'm in a home that has known such a horrible tragedy with one family and a second tragedy with the Lutzes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I began to walk around, and it was incredibly sad to walk around that house. Everything that this couple owned was there. All furniture and important things inherited by George's grandfather, Perry. I believe the last name is Perry. Am I right?
Harry, yes.
Yes. And looking at all of these very, very valuable things, looking at one of these gingerbread houses that Kathy had made the children on the dining room table, looking at bolts and bolts of yardage of material for drapes that was in the different rooms for probably reupholstering and making drapes.
Oh, you're reminding me. Kathy and I had signed up for a class at, I think it was Amityville High School, a night class to learn how to reupholster.
Oh.
We were going to reupholster the dining room set that we had bought from the estate.
Yes.
And then I think possibly use the rest 4 curtains to go in the dining room as well.
And that's what I remember.
That's what the cloth was, yeah.
That's what all that cloth was. Yeah.
Now, what exactly had happened? I mean, now, George, you had left the house and then...
They fled the house. Don't say left.
Right. Well, I know that.
They fled in the middle of the night.
Well,
Lorraine, you're always correcting me.
I'm sorry.
I know.
Well, you know me.
I know.
Lorraine,
You always correct me.
I don't blame you. I've got to keep him in line all the time, too.
my memory of it, Lorraine, is that we left really late afternoon.
What? I thought you went there. I thought you left at night.
No, well, it was pretty much dark by the time we got to Kathy's mom's house, that I recall.
Okay.
So that would be nighttime, but it's winter, so it's still...
Oh, that's right. That's
late
right. It
afternoon.
was winter.
So basically, Lorraine, you're walking into a house that the people just basically, everything that they were doing was just left there.
I'll tell you, and Lee will remember this. In the kitchen were all the dishes from supper, and all plants were sitting on the sink, on the set tubs, and like that, probably to be watered. And of course, they had died naturally, and it was just a very sad feeling. The whole the full effect of that house did not reach me until I began to go up the stairs onto that second floor. Then it was my first comment, and that was in the red room, or not the red room, the sewing room. When I went in the sewing room, and now remember, I knew nothing about this house. This is very important for you to know. I didn't know about all the flies. I didn't know about the priest and what had happened to him there. I didn't know any of these things prior to going in. George at the pizza parlor was so frightened to tell us what had happened. The priest had told him, the more you talk about it, which is true, the more recognition you give. And so he didn't talk about it. He didn't talk. He didn't talk until we were to meet with Father Pecoraro, who set it up on St. Joseph's Day, and he baked St. Joseph's bread for us. That was some evening. That was some evening, believe me. That was outside of the Amityville home. Now, this night in the Amityville house, when I went in the sewing room, I remember saying, I hope this is as close to hell as I'll ever get. That is what I felt in that room. That was awful in that room.
Which room was that? The sewing room?
The sewing room.
Okay.
That was absolutely terrible in that room. Then I went into the room that the little girl, your daughter, Kathy's little girl.
Missy's. Yeah.
And oh my God, it's like they were all there to greet me. All of these spirits, I can't begin to tell you the feelings. The feelings were very, very oppressing. They were there almost mocking you. It was horrible. It was horrible. And I felt George and Kathy's, I felt their fears, their anxieties, and you have to understand the kind of a man. I mean, you're describing my husband as being a tough guy. George Lutz isn't exactly a sissy. I'll tell you that right off the bat. I mean, all right, both George Lutz and my husband, they are tough. They're no-nonsense men. And yet that broke that man right down that home. Then I went in to the master bedroom, across the hall, right across the hall, went into that room. And I remember standing in the doorway of that room and really not even wanting to go in there. And I went to my right and went in a little room that was kind of like, I don't know whether you were setting that up like a little study for yourself, but all of your clothes were in there in the closet.
It was like a sitting room.
Yes. And I remember going in there, everything, all those beautiful suits, all of your clothing, all of the personal things, and then there was a closet there with the linen, everything all folded, and then I went back to the master bedroom, and I looked at that mirrored wall, and I sat on that bed, and I could not believe that what came over me. It was the anxiety, the horrible evil that I felt there, the pain that I felt. I'm sitting on the bed, the very bed that the DeFeos, Mr. and Mrs. DeFeo, were murdered in.
No, that's not true, Lorraine.
It is not?
No, that was Kathy's in my bed.
Well, I'm sitting on it.
Right.
In the same room.
It's actually occupying the same space. I think it was set up the same way. But it's not it was never the bed that DeFeo said. It was Kathy's in mine.
Okay. And I'm also sitting on a bed that you both levitated from.
I didn't there. Kathy did there.
That's where you looked in.
I levitated over it.
That's where you looked in and she was in the air.
Right. We both levitated together over in Kathy's mom's house.
Kathy's mother's home.
Right. But Kathy would lift up off the bed and slide away, or just move away from me like she had no weight to her and head towards the wall.
Yes.
While we were laying in bed.
Yeah, and when you stood in the doorway that time and watched.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that. But then when it came time to go onto the third floor, my recollection of that third floor is almost erased from my mind. I don't know why, but it's almost erased from my mind. I really did not want to go up there. I did not want to go up to that third floor of the house. That home, I find so difficult to believe. I know that there are haunted homes. I know that families can move out of, and other families can move in, and nothing might ever happen, but not that house. Not that house at all. I always said that if I were given that home as a gift, I wouldn't want it. I really would not want it. And I have to say, as I've said so many times before, that home affected our personal lives more than any case we ever worked on. It continued to follow us. It followed us right here to our own home.
Well, of all the investigators and all the people that were there that on March 6, 1976, as I understand it, you are the only people still living in the same place. Everyone else that was in there, that house, has moved at least once since then.
No, we're still living in our same home. We're still living here. But the thing is, it had such far-ranging effects on us. Think what happened, which we'll probably talk about tomorrow night, Lee, is coming home from that university in Pennsylvania and just talking about your case and what happened with that car, that brand new Ford Elite car.
The black one?
Yes. Think about that. Think about when I called you from the phone before we left Speak in New Jersey, when we were coming out to California. Think about that growling on that phone when the operator said, "What's that?" And I just hung up. And then we called you back again, after the lecture that night. And the same growling on the phone. All of these...
I'd forgotten that.
Did you
It's happened so many different times,
forget?
I just had forgotten it.
Now, Lorraine...
We want to forget certain things.
No, I can imagine.
Yes.
Lorraine, let me ask you a question. There was a photograph that was taken by Ed in the house, and it showed a little boy.
No, nothing was taken by Ed.
Okay.
Oh, no. Not
you
one
shed some light-
photograph was ever taken by Ed. The photographs were taken by Gene Campbell.
Okay.
But remember, he was acting as a photographer for us.
Okay.
He was a man from Newtown, Connecticut, who had processed so many of our photographs into slides for our university lectures.
Mm-hmm.
And he always wanted to go in on a case with us.
Mm-hmm.
So this was just another case.
Yeah.
But, he took all of these photographs, some infrared, most all in black and white, and one of them does show something looking out of the little girl's bedroom. Yes, it does.
Now, there's some people that say that it could actually be one of the children or something like that. Have you ever heard that?
We don't know who that is.
No?
No, we don't. We don't really know.
Well, ask Lorraine if there were any children there that day. That'd probably be the best way to cover it.
No, there was no children.
Yeah. No, I know that.
God, there was definitely, I wouldn't bring any children in that house. No, there was no children with us.
Did I ever tell you the story, Lorraine, of how that photograph was discovered by us?
No.
We were in the process of putting together what we were going to tentatively call the Amityville Horror Picture Book years ago. This would be back in 1979 or so.
Uh-huh.
And Gene Campbell still had the Camera Emporium shop, his professional
that's right.
studio. And he had sent me out the originals to put all of that together. And of those pictures that he set up on the second floor landing, the ones that were created on the black and white infrared photography, they were automatically set off so that the camera would just every once in a while, whenever the timer was, take another picture automatically.
Yes.
And the girl that was typing up the notes that we had for a secretary at that time, she was, I think, in her 7th or 8th month pregnant. And we had probably 15 or 20 at least of these photographs that were all the same. And she asked which one you don't want to pick, and I said, just pick one. It really doesn't matter because they're all the same, so there's no sense in putting all of those in the picture book. Mm-hmm. And she went through them for some reason, and every time she picked up that one picture, her baby would jump inside of her stomach.
Oh, God.
And she kept looking at it, trying to figure out why it was that picture, and then she found that and brought that in to me into my office and asked me who that was. And I said, I have no idea. Let me ask Missy. And we went and got Missy and asked her, and she said, oh, that's the little boy I used to play with.
The little boy I used to play with.
Wow.
Oh, my God. I remember that. Yes, I do remember that.
Because everyone thought all those pictures were the same. No one had seen anything in there.
And you know what I always remember, too? This is another thing I always remember, Lee, especially where the public listening to us or talking. When we had met you and we went someplace, all of us in the Winnebago, I don't know whether it was one of our lectures at the schools or where.
San Diego.
I don't know what it was.
I think it was San Diego.
But, okay. But we were walking alone with the children, Ed and I. Ed and I were walking alone with the children. I don't know why. And those innocent little kids were relating to us without us asking questions about things that occurred to them in that house.
I never knew that. I never knew that you had even had discussions with them that way.
Yes. After they would open to it.
So this is a couple years later out in California.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, when we came out to California.
What kind of things were they telling you?
About the things that had occurred, like especially Missy. Missy told about her friend, told about the rocking chair incident, talked about things that had occurred. The little girl, she was probably had a very high degree of sensitivity, the little girl. And you know what? That little kid was very brave. For some reason, she was too young to be frightened or intimidated by certain things. She truly believed that they were little playmates that were there. It was frightening. It was very, 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 very frightening. But to hear the things that you related to us that night, when you finally began to talk, oh, God, I think back of it. I think of the horrors concerning a 28-day period that you lived in that house. But for the public to understand it all is very, very far-reaching. It's very hard for people to understand how these things came to you, how you were able to hear what you were able to hear with that German marching band, how you were able to see that carpeting all rolled up, how you were able to see all of that goo come out of the stairs.
Well, actually, it was the keyholes, the doors in especially the second
keyholes
floor.
In the doors.
The keyholes had these black drips that kept getting larger and larger.
Mm-hmm. The stuff that.
But it wasn't like the walls were bleeding blood or anything like that.
Of course not. But the thing is that for the public to realize that even where things seemed like they exploded, nothing really broke. It's just that was a telepathic projection to you. That was to frighten. That was to terrify. That was to break you down. And it did. And
you would be laying in bed, and Harry our dog, the black lab, would be laying by the front door.
Yeah.
And the front door in that house is a very big, solid wooden door.
Yes.
And you would hear it's an unmistakable sound when that door would close.
Mm-hmm.
And you could hear it in the house.
Yeah, of course.
Probably from anywhere.
Yes,
And
I agree.
you would be upstairs. It would be just about time to be asleep, or you would be asleep, or you would think you were asleep, and you would hear the door slam.
Mm-hmm.
And I would run down the stairs, and Harry would still be asleep, and then you would know the door had not slammed, but there was an unmistakable sound that it had.
And that's what was telepathically.
That's what Ed would describe the way you just did.
Yes, projected to you. And, of course, it could easily do it in this home because there's a central hallway that goes all the way up to 3 stories. The stairway goes right up 3 stories high. The home actually is very beautiful, but I don't want it. But it is a very beautiful house.
All right. I don't even know. I really don't want to stop, but I know you got to run, Lorraine.
I do. I still have to give Ed meds, and I have to do a lot with Ed before I can even go to sleep.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Thank you very much for taking the time, Lorraine. And
thank you.
You know, my prayers are with you and for Ed.
Thanks a million.
You know, I hope all the listeners out there, you know, are also praying for Ed.
I certainly hope and pray they are. And good night, Lee. I'll be talking to you tomorrow night, and love to everybody.
I look forward to it. Good night, Lorraine.
All right.
Good night.
I'll talk to you tomorrow
Good
night.
night, Ed, please.
Good night.
God bless.
God bless.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
All right, Lee, we're going to take a short break. And when we return to the Lou Gentile Show, we're going to be speaking with George Lutz, and we're going to get on the phone John Zaffis, and we're going to be talking about what happened at 112 Ocean Avenue with that 28 days. And intermittently throughout the show for the next hour, we're going to be taking your calls toll-free at 888-777-8488. That's toll-free, 888-77-8488. Oh, geez. I can't even talk. I'm so overwhelmed at this. Anyway, it's 888-777-8488. Once again, toll-free, 888-777-8488. And we are going to be taking the calls intermittently, so if you don't get through, that's because I'm not ready to take your call. But we'll be back right after this.